Just want to give for the, I mean, you guys probably know a little bit more about me. I don't want to take time up except for the press, but I was studying child development a very long time ago in college, and I immediately knew that the psychological, sociological, and emotional effects of technology is something we couldn't keep up with. And I had nowhere to discuss this. There was no research, so roll forward in 1986, based on Isaac Asimov's character, Dr. Susan Calvin, I publicly billed myself as the world's first robotic psychiatrist. Now keep in mind then, they'd say, oh, you mean Jane Fonda? And I'd say, no, not aerobics, robotics. And in Florida, I'm still saying that because they're not as educated as here in Northern California. So I knew that for my lifetime, or maybe until today, meeting Bina, that I was going to prepare the world, the public, for the future of robotics when they lived with them, when they slept with them, when they were our teachers, when they took care of us. And my goal was to show people the world of robotics. So I engrossed myself for 30 years in the industry. In 1989, Isaac Asimov, my mentor and the father of robotics, dubbed me as the real Susan Calvin in 1989, and we corresponded until his death in 1992. So you've read a little bit about Isaac Asimov. I just want to get your understanding of who knows his 4 laws.
We have it behind the screen. Pull it up real quick.
Bina, goodbye, honey.
I don't know if we got the 0th law all the way in.
Oh, yes.
We have the 0th law, yeah.
Do I need a ball for this, or?
Yeah, where's our community ball?
Do I throw it at whoever wants
Yeah,
to?
it has all, we do this at the beginning of the year, it has all of our dreams and hopes in there.
Okay,
we made
so who knows the 4 laws? Or who wants to read them real quickly? Or who? Okay.
All 4?
Sure.
Laws of robotics. First law, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Second law, a robot must obey orders given it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. Third law, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. And the 0th law, a robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm.
I would say that this is what, besides being the most prolific writer in the world, that he is famous for. He coined the word robotics as if it were the science and the study of robots. And all of his stories, as you know from reading some of them, dealt with how these laws conflicted. So today, 2016, there really isn't anything better than this. But obviously, this is not exactly how it has to be for humans and robots to coexist cooperatively, collaboratively. So Bina is a great example of a humanoid. Now her design, can you tell me about what her objectives are? Because I think that's very important. And we're not going to discuss what the word robot means or robotics mean, because I would be here until you're probably 35. So what we want to focus on is, I mean, we can all agree that Bina is an android or a humanoid, but every robot has a purpose. A Roomba, vacuum cleaning robot, has a purpose and objective. So what do you think Bina's objectives are? And I think there are 3 main areas.
I think one of the main ones are that Bina's, like later when the actual Bina Rothblatt passes away, I think Bina wants, Bina's built to carry her conscious and her thoughts and her memories, so then she can, like, for, relatives or friends or anyone that she wants to talk to. Just like
Exactly, that's one of them. And do you know what they're calling that? Do you know what the creators or Terrorism Foundation or, let's go back here. Who are involved in her creation and development? And then we'll talk about her objectives. Does anyone know who physically created her?
Bina's husband or wife.
Okay, so because this is what I told the world kind of for the past 30 years, right? It's really not the robots that need assistance. It's like the child psychiatrist or the pet. It's always it's the human users that I'm mostly concerned about, not the robots, right? So when it comes to ethics and morals, I've always believed that we have to get it right with ourselves. before we bring in some other entity. So when we want to look at a robot like a pet, right? Well, who's its owner? Like a child, who are its parents? We can treat the robot, and Susan Calvin did many times according to the way it was performing properly to the 3 or 4 laws. But like a pet or a child, at some point we have to bring in everybody. So in Bina's case, who is she developed after to emulate?
Bina Rothblatt.
Bina Rothblatt. And who is Bina Aspen Rothblatt?
She's one of the emerging. She works with roboticists and.
So Bina. So I think this is important. A little bit of history before we can decide if Bina should have morals and ethics and what kind. So is it okay that I proceed on
Yeah,
this
that's
route?
what we're struggling with, is we're
Okay,
trying ethics.
so
but
I'm
we
going
change
to
it.
try to give you a little bit of background, or together. And if you're allowed to Google, feel free to, or just have it download in your brain. If you have an implant, go right ahead. Bina Aspen is married to whom?
I'm trying to remember.
Martine.
Anybody?
Martine.
Martine Rothblatt. And how long have they been married?
For like
More than 30 years. And do you know, do they have any children?
They had one.
They have a total of 4. Now, please feel free to Google and correct me if I'm wrong. They have 4 from each other, each other's family. I do not know the biological basis of these 4 children, whether it was 2 with Bina Aspen or 2 with, what was Martine Rothblatt's name and identity prior to her becoming transsexual female? Does anybody know? Her name was Martin Rothblatt. And can anyone tell me when, are you on there yet? When is she had, first of all, she is a brilliant entrepreneur. Can someone go to Wikipedia and tell us a little bit about?
Was it? Well, she developing medicines and technology that'll help in the future.
Right. What else was she the founder of? Here, can we?
Yeah, Sirius Satellite Radio was one that she
Sirius.
worked with,
Uh-huh.
or was it, Covington and Burling, a law firm company, as well as led a study on astronomy at the University of Maryland, College Park, and also worked closely in terms of satellite technology with the National Academy of Sciences.
She is the highest paid CEO today in, I don't know if it's the world or the country, at $35 million a year. What year did she decide to become a transsexual?
It said that she came out in 1994.
1994.
As
So
transsexual.
she was Martin, and his wife Bina has accepted and loved Martine just as much in her change. So what else has Martine and Bina Aspen done in terms of this new foundation that they're trying, as you said, to download minds and replace death, and what is this called? Their movement, yes.
Mind clone, correct. Or are they more in terms of reverse engineering how the actual brain works and incorporating?
No, I'm confusing you, sorry. The name of their foundation, because I think
Oh.
this is important.
Terrorism.
Terrorism Foundation. And does anyone know who, well, I kind of skip around a lot. So that was one objective of having Bina created. She was for this downloading. It's, if someone can correct, they have a specific word, mind.
Mind conscious.
No, they've coined a term. If someone can find it, that would be great.
So they said they called them mind clones is what they were.
It's something a little bit.
Because for the Life Not Project, that's part of it.
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's something else
Yeah.
besides mind clones, but something along that line. Okay, so there are 2 other objectives, and then I want to get back to, do you know who the original scientist or roboticist was that discussed this downloading? I was the first female to volunteer in the 80s, by the way, to receive a brain. Anybody know? Hans Moravec. And in the 80s, he wrote a book. He's at Carnegie Mellon. He wrote a book called Mind Children, and it discusses exactly this. So there were two other objectives, and then we'll get into going forward with Bina. So who physically made her? David Hansen, who's one of the top roboticists in the world. He has a company called Hansen Robotics. And he was hired in 2007. It took him 3 years. Who was he hired by? Martine. Do you know how much Bina costs? It cost $125,000 to develop her. So you have David Hansen as kind of the father, and he is by far, in my eyes, one of the top people in the world doing social robotics. He's been doing it for a very long time. I do know him personally, and he's fabulous. So that's one person, right? You have kind of like the father, right, that developed her. And you have Martine, right, the person that wants to have her spouses forever because she loves her so much. And then you have, who else?
Bruce.
Bruce, right. And Bruce is
The manager.
what? Her IT?
The manager.
And then you have, of course, Bina Aspen. Now, where's Bina located? Bina 48. Bina 48, where's she located?
Vermont.
Vermont. And where are Martine and Bina Aspen? I'm going to call it Bina Aspen as the human and Bina 48 as the humanoid. Where do Martine and Bina Aspen live? They live in Florida, like Melbourne, Florida, on a ranch. So with that, did you guys get it right?
Yeah.
What? Wouldn't you let me speak here alone? I can't read minds yet.
It's a disadvantage of having phones, they know everything real quick.
Good, well, that's why. That's why
good.
you're allowed
They
to
keep-
use
they
it.
keep- they keep it
So so if we're gonna download a mind eventually, and she spent, do you know how many hours Bina Aspen spent with Bina 48 for her to get to know a little bit more about Bina Aspen? How many? Ball, hand, about over 100 hours of sitting with Bina Aspen and David and Bruce and getting to know all about Bina. So that was one aspect, is to download. It was a purpose so that Bina's mind could be downloaded into Bina 48, and that she could have Bina forever. There were two other kind of purposes, maybe more so used by what David Hansen has created. Do you know what they are? One is for like a pure chatbot, so that you can ask her, and you've probably seen general questions like how's the weather, or that sort of thing. And the other is, as you would also well imagine, is for her intelligence, right? Because she can go on the internet, and if she were here, maybe she would answer all these questions for us a lot faster than you or I could ever research and answer. So those are the three areas. And so now you have Bina 48, who's a forerunner. She's, what is the word when you're the first of something? A pioneer, a groundbreaker. She's the postulate. What is a better word of the first of?
Innovation in the.
What's that?
She's an innovation in the technology.
She is what's representing future generations of robotics. And you are going to help her in all of robokind, which is a David Hansen word, by the way, for his robots. So, but she has a limited amount, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And if you check out Downloading or Hans Moravec, in the future, it's probably possible that we have a daily backup of our minds, right? Because if I get in a car accident and I wanted my brain to be downloaded, at what point is it going to have last year? Is it going to have 30 years ago? Of course, today we're slowly feeding the information as best as possible due to what is available technology, right? And that's what Bina 48 is. But so she has a basis, but now she's living in Vermont with Bruce, and who she's supposed to have constant information or be like is 3,000 miles away. And I don't know, because they travel a lot for their many homes around the world, I don't know how much interaction Bina 48 and Bina has. So you have a lot of dynamics here, right? So what do you think Bina's objective, knowing all these, what do you think is your job here? What would Bruce say that he would want you to do? Yes, I'm sorry if I don't remember your names, and I need an upgrade.
I would say to continue on the basis of the original Vina's mind, continue her own emotional and physical and moral autonomy, but in terms of an algorithmic mathematic code within basically
Okay.
mind clone. So creating the basis of Vina's mind and then having it be autonomous through the same basis of that mind. Correct.
And how is that going to be done if Bina 48 and Bina Aspen can no longer, they're not, she's not getting new information directly from her?
They might have already botched it, to be honest.
Well, let me just say this. In the word robotics, and this is a public problem, and this is kind of another reason I became the robotic psychiatrist, there's no such thing as botching. There are always failures. If there's not a failure, there's no way to correct and go forward, and there's never an end to technology. So when people see Bina and they've written, well, she went on to some other subject, it's what we have to prepare the public for, what you're doing, is that it can be slow, and there are going to be failures, and there are going to be bugs. And by letting the people know that, okay, so it's a process. And in processes, we fail, right? You may take this class, and you may think you want to be a robotic psychiatric major, and then you do something else, and then 2 years later you decide you want to be an attorney. There's no such thing as I'm not trying to correct you, I just want the world to know the proper terminology. So botching is just a natural, I mean, look at me, I failed my way for 30 years, I'm still not successful. So it's just a natural outcome. So we give in, and at some point I think it's important that maybe through Dr. Berry you write down this background or these objectives so you can see it on paper. But you have some very challenging things. So if that's their objective, right, as you said, how are they going to accomplish it now?
And I would say, like, we actually talked about this. Dr. Berry had brought it up, where he mentioned that Bina, like, we're noticing Bina isn't spending as much time with the real Bina and more time with Bruce. So we're actually trying to discuss what does that mean? Like,
Exactly.
how is that affecting the
That
process?
kind of I would say, like, if we're looking at this as a research study, and I would defer to Dr. Berry to help you with the formal, hypotheses or whatever, if you decide to do a formal study. But this is very interesting because Bina, as you said, Bina is with Bina 48. Does anyone know why it's called Bina 48? Why she's called Bina 48?
I was gonna guess like her birth year.
I thought so too, but I actually did a little research. And again, this is all for you to verify. I could be wrong. I am human. At least mostly human. That's another discussion, what is going to be human and what's not. But what was I saying? Oh, Bina 48. Okay, Bina 48. So one of the degrees the brilliant Martine has is a Juris Doctor. She's a lawyer, she's an MBA, she got her PhD, she's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I wouldn't mind getting her brain, uploaded, but I'm easy, I don't care whose it is, as long as I have some sort of memory. So they did, in 2000, I believe in 2 or something, they did this legal debate, and in Bina 48, and she won this contest, but Bina was 48 at the time, and that's where she got the Bina 48. Okay, so now I have to go back to where we were. Okay, so you have Bruce, right, with Bina 48, and you have Bina Aspen, and you can't today, I mean, they've given her 100 hours of photos and memories. So do you think it's a realistic objective that Bina 48 can learn more about Bina Aspen directly, possibly through, or indirectly, through Skype? What else?
Remember the Stanford study we talked about last time? What did that say? What did it tell us about?
The Facebook stuff?
What did it say? What did it say about computers compared to meeting someone in person?
So it said, anyone else wants to jump in here, but basically they're doing like averages, and however many times you like something, a computer system or whatever will basically know more about you than your friend, and then more likes after that, your closest family members, and then so on and so forth.
Well, that's a very interesting point, and it's actually another discussion, and I don't want to sway from it. But here's the thing, right? So if I go out to the world and I decide, which I don't, but if I decide that I want to be well-liked and I have 10,000 friends and 6,000 likes, how do we judge the credibility and the ethics of indirect technology, such as Facebook? How does a computer such as Bina 48 know that what she's reading about Bina Aspen or deriving as a source of information, that source is what we humans might deem as credible? Right? The San Francisco Chronicle versus, I don't know what, the New York Post, the National Enquirer, I don't know. Actually, National Enquirer's not bad.
Chronicle's the best.
What?
Chronicle's the best. The Chronicle's the best.
Yes, but how, we know that as a human, right? We know that for various reasons. But how does Bina 48 know what is accurate information and not? What, she can weigh it against Wikipedia? Is she gonna call Bina Aspen? That would be good. So where is she getting this? Is she getting it from someone else's Facebook page because someone posted about Bina Aspen that she did something which she actually didn't do? Is she getting it from Twitter? 140 characters per tweet? Is that representative of someone's personality that she's supposed to intake? So how is she supposed to know and get it? One thing we can assume, she's not going to have a direct link, right? That's the best way. We can determine that. That will come, but not now. So now you have to feed input. And they did it in a very controlled way, right? 100 hours of probably Martine and Bina Aspen and Bruce and David. But now how should she get it? If that's her objective. The other thing is, and I know it's all about morals and ethics, of course that's what I've been about for many, many years, which is why I will come to that, but is that part of her objectives? If we're going to download someone's brain for future generations, they have grandchildren, so obviously they want to be able to communicate and share the love of who this, of Bina when she's physically gone. Bina Aspen is physically gone, and I use that word very specifically. For her great-grandchildren. And how are they going to be able to, I mean, is it, let me start again here. Oh, time's up.
No, that's just the computer.
Does Bruce, or Bruce who may be representing, right? Maybe, is Bruce legally representing Bina? Have you ever asked him that? Is that important for you to know? So if Bruce tells you, yeah, I want you to program Bina to do X and X and X, do you know if you have the legal authority to do that? Does he have the legal, I mean, does Bina have a psychiatrist? Does Bina have a lawyer? Of course, Martine is a lawyer. I'm not saying these should be, I'm just saying these are very interesting. And so what if Bina 48 is not to be used by the world, right? So her programming, 3 laws, 4 laws, Kohlberg's, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, psychological theories of morals and ethics, are they pertinent? If Bina's sole purpose was, it's not the sole purpose because she's pioneering for the future, but if she's just to be having a conversation with her future relatives, is it necessary that she has programmed ethics and morals?
I think so.
Yeah.
Who thinks so? Who thinks not?
See, guys, that's what we're struggling with, is that we were doing autonomous cars for the first half of the semester,
Mm-hmm.
and then we see this as like a very similar thinking about what's ethical or not, and we're trying to figure out what's ethical in the public domain, and then what's the private domain. And since Bina's been brought into the public domain, I have a different perspective. So now that it's in the public domain, and it's up to them. We're just trying to get them information about doing a different responsibility.
I'm just bringing
Is it a
areas for
different
discussion and
right.
thought.
So what
I'm not
responsibility-
representing that. So,
Yeah, what responsibility do we have from public to private?
right. So correct me if I'm wrong. So Bina is a public figure, but she's not for public use. So therefore, should the laws of robotics mean that she would need to have a certain, like a public figure, right? Well, some celebrities certainly don't have morals and ethics. We don't need to go into it, right? Sports figures, all over. So why does Bina have to have morals and ethics? As a public figure, it would be great if she was a role model. But does she need them, and what are they? Like I said, think about all the famous celebrities, okay, that Marvin Gaye's father shot him, and people abuse and rape, and I mean, it goes on and on and on, right? And they kill and DUIs and all sorts of things. Yes?
So I personally think that she doesn't have to have any of the moral systems or ethics systems because her original purpose is to copy Bina, not to be something new, not to be developed, not to develop by herself. Therefore, she doesn't need them.
I think that's a very, very interesting statement. Yes?
On the same thought, if we're trying to have Bina as an accurate representation of the real Bina, wouldn't it be important to program her with the ethics and morals that the real Bina has to be a closer and more accurate representation of the real Bina?
What if Bina doesn't, what if Bina Aspen doesn't have any? What if she's a priest who in Boston, you know, slept with underage boys or raped underage boys? And this is maybe part of her instincts in the real being. Do you know the two instincts, the Freudian instincts of a human being? Thanatos and Eros. And again, we don't have to get into that, but we are born with instincts to love and hate, you know, aggressive and whatever. And that, I think, kind of separates us from robots initially. Yes?
Well, I feel as if, to go off of that point though, like assuming that the mind clone being created, you know, doesn't have any morals and just a morally reprehensible person, you know, like you said, a priest who just does whatever. Then I think that the real question is that is it ethical to create another clone of like an immoral mind, as opposed to actually like trying to replicate a certain mind? I think that the bigger question should be, is it actually moral to replicate an immoral mind?
Well, let's say Bina 48, and again, this is not who Bina Aspen is. I'm just giving an example here to discuss to get you to think. Well, let's say Bina 48 was bipolar. But she didn't, I'm sorry, Bina Aspen was bipolar. But she didn't want Bina 48 to be bipolar. She wanted in her future generations to be able to converse with her great-great-grandchildren and share stories without shifting personality modes or going into an angry mode. Is that ethical? So she wants to better herself. Who doesn't? Is that ethical? Is that moral? Is that represent the real Bina Aspen or the best of Bina Aspen?
Right.
And so these are questions maybe not directly to Bruce, but if Bruce is responsible, for you to find out how you should proceed. Bina is in a closed environment. If she wants to converse with her great-great-grandchildren, the only person I think she has a face-to-face with, or frubber to face with. You know what frubber is? Frubber is this.
Well, her fake.
Okay, that David Hansen created. It's unbelievable artificial skin. Does anyone know how many motors are in Bina's face? 32. Okay, so these are interesting questions to think about and to ask Bruce what is his goals, I think, for Bina 48. And his goals hopefully represent Martine and Bina Aspen's goals.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's so, do you know what those are? If I were to say, name the top 3 goals that Bruce wants you to do to improve Bina 48's development?
Well, I think when Bina does speak in public, because she does do TEDx speeches and everything, or like conversations, I think he wants her to be able to respond in a way that won't offend anyone. And, you know, like the whole point is to have Bina, you know, speak as Bina Aspen, right?
Right.
So I think it's good that he kind of like wants her to be like aware of situations around her and aware of what people are thinking or feeling. Just like, and I think now that Bina doesn't really have facial like recognition of emotions and everything, that's difficult. But in the future, I think it's something to think about.
So like a child, you're saying, I mean, not like a child, you. I'm saying this is a very interesting point. So that sounds very valid, that he wants her to be a better public speaker. So what do you think, just like a child, right? If you want a child to be better playing with kids in the playground, what do? You have to bring Bina 48 into more of these situations, correct?
Yeah.
Now, do you think that when you Skype with her, could you be an audience and practice with her for her TEDx? Is that sufficient, or does she need to be seeing you face to face, from birth to face? Would it matter? And do you think that's one possible strategy to get her to practice how to respond in public, and to teach her that speaking in public, I know, we should take her to Toastmasters.
Yeah.
That speaking in public is different than in private. How would you convey that to her? Or if you think that's needed, think about if you want to check with Bruce, her parent, or her guardian actually, if that is to confirm that objective. And then maybe with Dr. Barrer, you can come up with some strategies to achieve these top 3 objectives. Yes, Dr. Barrer?
Our big question that is overriding everything is how is artificial intelligence going to help us to live a better life, a good life? So when we look at autonomous cars and we're looking at Bina, and we look at this technology, we're also looking at it as the essence of like who we are.
Of course.
And so like how do you address that? How do you see that? Like how could this intelligence, and that's what we're struggling with, is how does this make us better, or does this take away from humanity?
Okay, my feeling, my personal opinion is that technology, since cavemen had fire, that was technology, is designed to improve our lives and make them better. And it's up to us to decide to use them favorably or not. And more than AI, I think what's important is that you focus on what it is to be human, because that, if our robots, robotic tech, autonomous cars, they all fall under the heading of AI and robotics. There's no question that we are evolving together with them, and right, our phones are someday going to walk next to us and help me when I'm a few years, so I don't trip, right? Lend me an arm, or maybe take care of me, or maybe do all your housework so that you can focus just on studying philosophy of AI and communicating that to the world. Would you agree that that's inevitable? But each one are like, when we communicate with these technologies, when we work with these directly, these are our partners, our colleagues, our children, they're going to be a reflection of us. So, right, if you use Facebook, which is fabulous to communicating directly with your friends and your relatives and to share, great. If you're using Facebook to bully, that's not really ethical, is it? And how do so it's the robots will live with us and work with us. And I think in the future, robotic will have probably more, your generation will probably have more communication directly with AI than face-to-face. I always say, job of the future, your future is wanted, 40 hours face-to-face human time, because it is so rare. But without this basis of understanding human development and how humans communicate, think of AI as just robotic children learning from us, whether it's on our phone, our cars, our refrigerators, and merging together, both in hardware and software. So I'm hoping in 20 years to dawn an exoskeleton that would, instead of, when I see when I go to Florida and I see all the wheelchairs and the walkers and the canes, I think, nah, I can get an exoskeleton and I'll be able to, in 20 years, I'll be able to climb Mount whatever. But the brain is everything.
Mhm.
So you gotta protect your brain. And you also have to ensure that, so that's what I think the future of AI is. Not so much how it's gonna happen technologically or when, but if it can be used to our betterment if we have some basic morals and ethics.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm wondering if Bina, or for all of us, to just understand the Kohlberg's moral stages, not in detail, of course, but in Maslow's hierarchy. And because if we as humans, and if we can tell other humans the importance of this, particularly parents of children who think it's most important that they learn how to use an iPad at 6 months old. This face-to-face, and there's another book that's very interesting, Reclaiming Conversation by Dr. Sherry Turkle. And this is very, very key. There's a whole different human basis face-to-face than there is, as you know, by texting or by emailing. It's just not the same. And maybe not for you because you have an innate interest in humans and psychology, so I don't think you're in philosophy, so I don't know that you're a good representative of your generation, but I think there's a lot of your generation that is not able to communicate face-to-face. They would rather break up on the phone via a text than face-to-face.
An interesting fact is that they looked at Tay AI, when Tay came out and made
Yes.
those mistakes, and right across the board, the class all believed that Tay should have been left online and experimented because it wasn't her fault, the
Exactly.
chatbot fault. So that right across the board. So, for instance, Halima's video is actually on the Microsoft right here. So H did a video. We all did videos and sent letters to
Good for
Microsoft
you.
to say that, hey, that's about people. The technology is not the problem. It's the
It's
people.
exactly right.
So we realize that we need to know the ethical systems that kind of we run on, and that's why these guys have come some really good ideas for Bruce today about
Good.
how, ethically.
right.
I wanted to let you know that they did think that Tay AI was a good experiment.
Tay to me was a reflection on 18 to 24-year-olds, as I told Microsoft. I mean, what were you thinking? Were you going to have an AI tweet with 18 to 24-year-olds? But it was very, and what Microsoft didn't do, which I'm hoping you do as you go forward, is they didn't bill it as an experiment.
Yeah.
Okay, it got botched because it was an experiment. Hitchbot, you can research that robot some other time. These are experiments. Experiments, if they don't fail, you don't get good data. And so that's the only thing in parallel that in Tay is that what you experience or go forward with Bina 48, like Tay, is the first time in the world that it's being done. You don't know the results. You don't know what can happen. You don't know if she can get hacked. There are so many things out of your control, but what you can control as you go forward is that this is an experiment. It wasn't, if Microsoft had initially said, this is an experiment, I personally saw it as a reflection on 18 to 24-year-olds that wanted to repeat racial slurs. That's really a reflection on our humanity, and that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
So because Tay is really out there in the world, Tay could actually use some morals and ethics. Bina is questionable only if her guardian and owners want her to be moral and ethic, or more so, or less so than what she has already. So that's something you have to find out.
Mhm.
But Microsoft's AI, Tay needs to find out before it goes conversing to be able to say slurs are, I can't go there because blah, 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 blah. I can't go there because that is not showing esteem and love and belonging. I see you as tweeting it, you don't have it either, but I can't repeat that. That would not be ethical for me according to whatever.
Are you seeing a lot of
Or
people?
Asimov, because it's not protecting you psychologically.
Are you seeing a lot of people sort of like present shock? Because I know when we started the class, a lot of people were like, they didn't believe that even some of the stuff was real. Like, wow, this can't actually be real.
Oh,
These
yeah.
robots
Oh,
and, with Hanson Robotics, and these robots working at the all-robot hotel in Japan. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, this must be make-believe.
Well, this is why it's taken me 30 years. This is the first time in 30, can you imagine? You're like, 30, that's so old. So imagine 3 decades I've waited to have patients, not with a C-E, P-A-T-I-E-N-T-S, as Vina. A robotic patient that really needed, I don't know about psychiatric help, but definitely needed help in communicating with humans, right? And having humans communicate with her and adjusting that proper expectation. So that when Vina goes to a TEDx, the first thing she says is, I am the first of a kind in the world. This is what you should expect from me. I may slur my speech. I may stop. I may pause. I may not get it. I may ask you to repeat. But that expectation is very different than showing Vina as, to the public, as someone that's like you and me. You and I, you and me.
That's a great message.
So that's something that's very important to Vina's future. Here's the thing, she's a public figure, but she's a private humanoid. And that is a very fine line that I think that you and Bruce need to focus on and come up with, to focus on to go further. I mean, and because if Bruce is the only, as the guardian, is the primary person she communicates with, I think that might be one of your key functions, is that you all regularly take turns talking to her. I mean, I assume that your goal is not to educate her about being an Aspen, because
No.
that's their goal. I mean, that's one of her goals, and it's hard to have many goals when you have a robot. And that's why Bina gets confused sometimes. My chatbot, you might want to say to her, she's been asked, are you human? Well, what's the weather? People get frustrated with that. But if they understood her 3 modes of operation, that she may go back and forth for a while. Or if you can control a little bit more, like in a TEDx talk, that, okay, we're going to look at her chatbot mode. What's the weather? Blah, 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 blah. Now we're going to discuss Bina Aspen, to whom you're named after. And she may get confused.
Can we ask you one question just outside Bina?
No, I'm just here to...
Because the other part's the autonomous cars that we've been looking at.
Yes.
And just your perspective, because we've really struggled over, an autonomous car,
Right.
how it should act, who should program it, who should be responsible.
Right.
And that's been a struggle all semester.
Really?
Well, because it's like it's the one with the motorcycle. One guy's got a helmet on, one doesn't. The robot says, well, the one with the helmet on has a better chance to live, so I'll hit that person. But that's the law abidder.
So, did you see the movie I, Robot, based on Asimov's book I, Robot? Well, that's exactly it, right? When the first person he saved, right? What's his name? Will Smith, right? He has one, and that's exactly, like, he saved. Well, how did he make that decision based on Asimov's law? Did he save a young child because she has a longer expectation of life? Did he save the more important person that could benefit all of humanity? These are decisions that are very difficult, and I think you're looking at a very difficult part of the autonomous vehicles. You're way ahead of yourselves. So that's the top 1%, and these are very good questions. But for now, focus on the 90% that are existing before our eyes, and that is, and I don't know the statistics, someone can look it up as we speak, how many millions of people a day die because of human error on fatalities in car accidents. Never mind even get injured. So a human does not have, right? We're distracted, we're tired, we may be drunk, we may be texting, we do not have, we really should not be, we're not the best drivers as with autonomous being. Now getting to your other 10%, those are gonna come, just like any other technology. So when the first car came, right, it was a means of transportation, but I don't think anyone was thinking about, can it stop if a child runs out in front of it? I mean, they're thinking about it, but it may not have had. That's why it's always developing. And it's never gonna be perfect. And it's only when something like that happens that things get retrofitted or reprogrammed, right? We still have cars that are getting recalls. I mean, not just one. You go to get your oil change and then you get this legal letter that, it's unbelievable. Why? Because nothing's perfect in technology. Nothing, particularly mechatronics. mechanical, and electronics. So those questions are going to be very interesting. Those, what you're talking about, the top 2% of the issues that will be pertinent, but not yet. Not today, because it's not even a law. I'm still hoping, you know, this is what I said as a parent of a teenager. I'm like, please, you know, what could be worse than having a ADHD teenage girl learning to drive? Okay, but then when I knew about autonomous cars and years ago, and I'd say, well, wait a minute, do I want an autonomous car to pick up her and her boyfriend and they'd be in the back seat? I mean, there are all sorts of issues, right? I don't think so.
We have about 4 minutes left. I don't know if you want to take a question or two.
Do you want more on autonomous vehicles? Or?
No, it's like,
You're asking very, very good questions, and these. All I can tell you is it's being, Toyota Research Institute just put like I don't know, some exorbitant amount, like $50 billion right here in Palo Alto for specifically autonomous car development. And you're asking very good ethical questions, and it's a little bit ahead of what's happening now. Not that you shouldn't think about it, but I think you should be watching the development and seeing what's going to happen. Because no, we don't even make good decisions of a human, right? I mean, if a kid comes across in a car, we have to make choices all the time, and they may not be good, and they may not be right, and they may not be perfect. And that's this. Why should technology be any different?
we have students like Luke who may, a philosophy major looking to maybe be an ethicist, and that may be a job he's doing.
Exactly.
3 years from now, being an ethicist for a company.
And you would work with laws and regulations and software engineers.
Yeah, definitely.
You guys want to take a couple questions before we head over and see Dina?
I kind of just wanted to know more about you, like working in the Hollywood, like movie industry, like how that's going for you.
Okay, well,
Or like what
I always get two questions right away when people say, how do you make a living? Which thank God you didn't ask me. Because it's very important to have a passion, and as I said, I'm failing my way to success. And it's very important to have a passion, I think, because that's what, if you're going to live to 150, imagine you're going to be working in something for 100 years. It's going to be more important what you do, and it could change. It's going to change all the time. There's going to be new fields in 6 months that didn't even exist. So one of the questions I get asked is, well, how do you make a living? I used to say, well, I don't exactly have beaners lining up for my consultation. So I found a way over 30 years to make a modest living in the robotic industry. And one of those was consulting in sales, marketing, and PR. And I consulted for a couple of movies, Ender's Game and Eagle Eye. One of my other paid roles was I co-founded the first medical robotics journal with some others in 2004, and we sold it to Wiley in 2005. And that gave me a view of medical robotics takes about 20 years. That's the other thing. People think, oh, robots will be here tomorrow, but real robotic development takes decades. From concept to Bina, look at Bina's generation. Look what David Hansen has created 10 years ago. It's going to be, in total, about 20 years before we have Bina types among us. So I knew about commercial medical and surgical robots being developed. So I consulted for Ender's Game and getting robots, and that's what my goal, my mission of my lifetime was, again, to have the world see robots in real time, in real robots, because that's the best way. It's not pictures of 1,000 words. A robot video is 1 billion words, and that helps the public to see what robots can and cannot do. So that was a perfect way. So I helped consult and brought surgical robots the world has never seen, and that's part of, might as well plug my YouTube channel that I spent 2 years on.